Hi, this is Zach with Worn & Wound, and today I'll be taking a look at the Dan Henry 1939 chronographs. So Dan Henry is a brand that we've talked about a few times now on the site. They kind of came out of nowhere a few months ago and released this line of very affordable, vintage-inspired watches. Dan Henry himself is a very well-known, well-regarded watch collector with perhaps one of the most impressive watch collections out there. And he built this line of watches based on the watches he had in his collection and his love of vintage watches to bring some of that aesthetic to just frankly a more, a broader audience, because a lot of the watches these are based on are completely and utterly unobtainable, even to people with a lot of money, because they're just so rare. So this newest watch, the 1939, is a multi-scale chronograph, and it comes in two different styles, which we have here, which frankly, though, the same watch are very different. So they could almost be two different watches altogether. They're two totally different takes on the multi-scale chronograph. This one here, the black dial, is perhaps the most striking of the two, in my opinion. It has almost an enamel effect to the dial, so the black is gloss and has this kind of beautiful sheen to it, and then a ton of printing on it, a ton of layers, applied markers. One of the great things about the Dan Henry watches is that they have features to them that really belie the price. So actually, before even getting into it, this watch is $220. It is quartz powered. It uses a Miyota quartz chronograph movement. It has a mineral crystal, so there's a little bit of savings there, but this still is a heck of a watch, because the finishing of these watches really, the finishing would hardly change for up to, a few $1,000s. It's just all movement and a couple of, those material details there. So continuing with the dial now, you have this very complex kind of structure here. You have all of the red areas are a tachometer. So you have a tachometer on the outside, then a spiral tachometer on the inside. Then you have a telemeter in gold, and then this really cool kind of ivory colored layer, which is printed on top and has, you can see it kind of lip up, is a pulsations dial. So that's why it's called a multi-scale chronograph, because you have pulsations, tachometer, and telemeter all on one dial. And then you have these applied gold markers, which look great. Particularly love the little kind of gold dots that are at some of the odd hours there. And then, you have those numerals. It's just a lot of layering, a very beautiful effect. Inside of those chronograph registers, you have some graining there, as well as that kind of overprinting that you would find on those multi-scale chronographs from the 30s. This one specifically, I have seen a Omega that this looks like it's basically an homage to pretty much one-to-one, but it's not a watch you're really ever going to see for sale or see on the street. So it's just a very cool watch to kind of bring the concept and aesthetic back. The case on these is very close to the 1947 model, which we also discussed. It's a very attractive case. One difference, though, is it is a little bit larger. So they didn't just recycle the case, they actually created a new one. So this one's 41 millimeters, 49 millimeters, and 13 millimeters tall. So the width of it changes a little bit, up from 40. And the crystal design changed. So the 47 had a box crystal. This is a much more of a smoother dome, which I think works well, because had you had the box effect, you would have probably had distortion that would have made the red tachometer on the edge there very hard to read. As is, everything's very crisp and clear and easy to look at. Then the case itself, brushed very nicely, really sharp edges on it, and it has one really nice effect. If you look at the case down from the side, it is polished along the edge there. So you have that one break. Once again, just really cool detailing that you don't find on watches that are quite so inexpensive so often. And then aesthetically, this is it's a great looking watch. It's very vintage looking, obviously. It's a little bit fussy in some ways, but in ways I like. And it has just this very kind of early 20th century feel. This is a conversation starter, I would think. This is not a watch people are going to see and be like, it's not going to just, it doesn't look like anything new. They're going to stop and think, oh, what is going on with this watch? So, if you want to wear a watch that's a little fun and funky, I really think that this is a very, very cool offering, and at the price, just kind of unbeatable. Now we'll take a look at the silver one. So like I said, although this is also the 1939 model and it is also a multi-scale chronograph, it really is wildly different looking. So it's really not two colors of the same watch. It's two different versions of chronograph that would have been from around 1939. This one feels a little bit more Patek kind of feeling, a little bit more kind of a luxury brand, and it's also really beautiful. So here you have a silver dial with sort of a satin finish. It really looks like steel, which I particularly like when silver has that real metal quality to it. On the outer edge here, you have a big telemeter, and then you have a spiral tachometer in the center, the kind of snail spiral tachometer, which is very cool looking. Not something you see very often on modern watches. Only really watches that are throwback in design have them. You don't have on this one a pulsations dial, so in some ways it's a little bit simpler, though there's obviously still a lot going on. Then you just have this kind of primary index here. This one's all printed, nothing is applied, so it has a little bit more of a stripped down look to it, but I think it is no less attractive, though the other one does kind of win in that feeling of having kind of over the top finishing, which then speaks to kind of higher quality, higher value. You get a lot of aesthetics here. It's just a simpler approach. I do think this one's a little bit easier to read, though. The printed black 12, 4, 6, 8, 10, and the sort of bullet-shaped markers in between them. And then the subdials are a little bit cleaner as well. One thing that's also really nice about this one is that it has blued steel hands. I highly doubt at this price point that they're actually heat blued steel. But if they aren't, these are some of the best, not, kind of faux heat blued steel hands I've ever seen. Sometimes hands like this can be too blue. One of the nice things about heat blue is that it almost looks black in some light, in other lights it's blue. This totally gets that across. So very well achieved. Maybe heat blued, just seems unlikely at the price point. Once again, on the wrist, this one is very attractive. It's a bit conservative as well, but also just kind of has that fun, funky, vintage feel to it that, you're just not getting on modern watches. So very, very well done, well executed. And just to kind of like quickly wrap up, what's cool with this series, he didn't add one watch, he added two totally different watches here. Both I think people are gonna find very appealing if they like that kind of old chronograph aesthetic. It's definitely one that's like kind of uncommon, especially at the price point. But I think even in the vintage collecting, most of the chronographs that people really are going crazy for are from kind of mid-century. So this earlier stuff is a little bit different looking and a little bit it's just unexpected. So I think it's very cool that he's bringing this kind of stuff, to the forefront, making it available. Once again, these are very, very inexpensive watches, and in the end of the day, that's kind of, the real kind of argument for what you're getting for a watch in general. And compared to the kind of fashion watches that are out there that are a dime a dozen, all look the same, you're getting something really cool here with, if not literal actual kind of watch cred, because it is kind of an homage to something, you're getting the spirit of this, and you're getting kind of a watch designed by somebody who knows a hell of a lot about watches. So there is a lot of history kind of baked in here. So very cool piece, I think, for people beginning out, or people beginning into the collecting, or people who are just looking for something and don't want to drop a huge amount of money to get the kind of flavor of it. So thank you. Please check out the corresponding article on Worn and Wound. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.